Welcome to the NABS podcast. NABS is the support organisation for those working in advertising, marketing and media. I'm your host, Louise Scody. Each week I'll be chatting with someone from our industry to find out how they support themselves and those around them through challenging times as well as the day-to-day. And it's all to help you support your own mental wellness. I can't wait to start chatting. This week our guest is Marty Davies. Marty is founder of Smarty Pants consultancy, a flexible, strategy-first creative consultancy model specialising in creative strategy, customer activation and retention marketing. With Just Eat, Smarty Pants won Best Use of Customer Insights at Engage Awards 2019 and a silver for Best Use of AI at the DMA Awards 2020. Marty is also joint CEO of Outvertising, the marketing and advertising industry's LGBTQIA+ advocacy group. Also, they're co-founder of Trans Plus Adland, a grassroots community group of trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming and intersex people across the world of marketing and advertising. Marty was named one of Campaign's Future Leaders 2022 and Pitch Superperson 2023. As a trans non-binary person, Marty is Campaign magazine's first transgender columnist. They write on LGBTQIA representation and inclusion with pieces like Is ad spend funding an increase in LGBTQIA hate crime and Being non-binary in Adland, both of which I have read. They are excellent. You should check out the column. Marty, brilliant to have you here, especially because you are such a super busy person. So thank you so much for coming on to the NABS podcast. It is wonderful to have you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm well. That you read out my full intro.
Pretty much.
Amazing. Yeah. Really nice to be able to speak with you today. Yeah. How are you?
Yeah, I thank you for asking. I am good. We had a lovely NABS team day yesterday, so I'm feeling very bolstered by that. Let's dive straight in.
Okay.
I am curious, what does mental wellness look like to you?
Well, yeah, this is an interesting one, isn't it? I first want to kind of turn the question back around on you actually and ask you that question. What does it mean to you?
Well, I love this because no one's asked me this before on this podcast, so thank you for asking. I think it looks like a state of mind where you're able to really appreciate the positive and have a bit of perspective around anything that's a bit more challenging in your life. And it also looks like engaging in some activity to support yourself as well. So for me, if I've got some space for myself during the day, if I've had a nice coffee, if I've listened to a podcast, such as the NABS podcast, but if I've gone for a walk on a podcast, if my daughter has been fairly easy to deal with on the school run and leading up to it, then those are all of the elements that lead up to mental wellness for me. So it's as much a state of mind as it is an active practice where I'm doing stuff to help myself. What about you?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. That makes sense. I think for me, I kind of think about the opposite of when I'm not feeling kind of well with my mental wellness. So when I felt kind of a lot of anxiety during the pandemic, for example, and really understood my anxiety and what that was, because it was very amplified by that. So when I'm not feeling as anxious as I did then, I'm feeling more mentally well, or the kind of the state of depression that I felt at periods of my life, throughout my life, really, if I'm not feeling that intensity, and engaging in behaviors that kind of indulge it, where I'm kind of not reaching out to people and spending more time alone, things like that, then I know that I'm more mentally well. So I kind of like think about the opposite a lot and try and identify the behaviors that mean that I'm slipping into being more mentally unwell. And I think I'm constantly struggling to like kind of pull apart the my kind of growing awareness of my own neurodiversity and mental wellness in a way that, like, embracing parts of what I believe is my ADHD, but also kind of recognizing when parts of it become unhelpful. And so, for example, becoming very hyper focused on an activity can be great, really rewarding. You get a lot of stuff done, but then it can be quite exhausting. So, yeah, really understanding that. And I think I relate to a lot what you were saying as well about finding space for yourself and Yeah, I think for me it's about feeling like I'm in my words, like I'm able to talk in an articulate way. I kind of really feel more mentally well when I'm actually able to articulate myself very well, and I'm able to write, and I can write more easily. These are things that indicate my mental wellness. And as well, I went to New York recently, and my friend is just a real gallery nerd, and I'm not. And I kind of very much embrace the kind of the meditative, it's it sounds a bit funny, but the meditative nature of art and being able to just be in that space and be quite quiet. And actually, I found that really, really helpful for my mental health. So I'm now kind of caught that bug, and I really want to do that more and bring that into my routine as well. Um, so it's, yes, finding that space to feel creative. When I'm actually really creative, I know that I'm mentally more well.
It's a bit chicken and egg, isn't it? Because you're more well because you're really creative, and then because you're being creative, you're more well. I find it a
Mm,
really interesting cycle, which makes me think of what you were saying about writing, that you know that you're functioning well when you're writing well. But it also strikes me that because you have outlets where you can express yourself, such as the campaign column, that that must be in some way then be bolstering your mental wellness in and of itself because you're able to do that.
yeah, yeah, for sure. It can also come with, yeah, the other side of it is that the pressure of it, the kind of that you feel like there's a responsibility and the looming deadline. It's the feeling like you're at uni and you've got an essay deadline. I hate that. But it also is what motivates me. So um, yeah, it is really great to have that platform though, honestly. And it's a really good thing to feel that people read that and respond to it, and you feel that it can drive some change. And that makes me feel mentally in a better space, because I feel like there's things that can be changed through it. And that feels amazing.
But so much of the work that you're doing is about activism, it's about finding a platform and then kind of speaking the truth of your experience and speaking for the trans community about the collective experience as well. And that's a big responsibility, right? So, what are the effects on your mental wellness, both negative and positive, of taking on that huge responsibility?
Um, yeah, I mean, it is. It does feel like a heavy weight, really, and I try not to. I am very fortunate to be able to have this platform in many ways, and like the ability to write and the ability to speak. Like it's just something that I find comes really well to me. So it's my kind of creative outlet, right? So it's how I can contribute. Um, but I do find it kind of a heavy responsibility, because I am a trans person. I'm not like the trans person and the person that speaks for all trans people. So um, I find myself kind of sometimes tying myself in knots about not wanting to speak on behalf of a community, which is often what I'm sort of asked to do in many ways. Um, so it is quite a tricky thing to do. I think what's interesting as well to me about LGBTQIA plus people, queer people, trans people, is the way I think about it is we often develop sort of coping mechanisms as kids to be safe in a society that is quite unwelcoming towards us. And I think those coping mechanisms are things like people pleasing. So we kind of people please a lot. And that can be something that's really hard to unlearn. And that is, yeah, that is something that is a really important thing to try and unlearn to actually have better mental health. And I think so that these are things that our community in particular, I think, suffers from. um, the ability to be able to move past people pleasing and feel ourselves in society, and that bettering our mental health as a result. um, yeah, and I think what's interesting as well about our community is that you know it is very broad, very diverse. There are so many differing experiences, and I can't really represent. I try my best. The best way to kind of represent as many people as possible is to really kind of be open to hearing others' experiences, and as different, very different to your own. Um, I'm fortunate in a way that I kind of like inhabit many letters or different letters, and have like abandoned some letters. It's just quite odd. Um, in inhabiting sort of like being identifying as a gay man earlier in my life, and then identifying, well, now I'm a trans person, trans non-binary person, um, with a bisexual identity. Um, I just I think that that has helped actually me in a way to kind of feel different experiences at different points in time that I've been very fortunate to have experienced. So I don't know where I'm going with that really. Just that it's very hard. It's very hard. I'm a curious person naturally, because I'm a planner, I'm a strategist. So I kind of think that that helps me to really soak up as much as I can, because I'm just interested in other people and their
I
experiences.
was just thinking that's fascinating because you've been on such a journey with your own identity and thinking about something that's talked about increasingly in our industry about if you can see it, you can be it, therefore, the importance of role modeling. So, having people in organizations, especially
Mm,
at the top, who are from different backgrounds, different experiences. Was your identity changing as you were understanding more about who you really were, or were you seeing role models who were making you realize, oh, actually, I'm feeling more this way rather than that way? I don't know if I've expressed that question correctly. Do you know
mm.
what I mean?
No, I think it's a yeah, no, I think I understand what you mean. So, um, I think when I was growing up, there was this thing that was called gay, and it was largely negative, and I was called it in a negative way at school. But there were, popular public figures and TV shows that kind of really explored what gay meant, and then that I felt very much that that was me. Um, and so having that role modeled or seeing it in the world, seeing it in media, really was helpful and informative to my own identity. Being able to kind of and feeling positive about that and being able to embrace it by seeing people in media or people in my life be successful, um, with that as part of who they were. Um, but there wasn't really, and I think what's great about labels, I talk about a lot. Labels are great because you find community through them, because people gather around that label, and then you can find your community. Um, but what's also quite tricky about labels is it can feel like a box that you then form around you. And I felt that I sort of kind of inhabited that gay male box, and didn't really reconsider that, was this fully right? And it felt sort of better than where I was. Um, but really, it wasn't quite right. And it was only through then more understanding more people's experiences and being curious and seeing more labels, new labels that I hadn't seen, and more visibility in media of like trans and non-binary people in particular, that made me realize, oh, actually, this is somewhere where I really resonate. Um, so I think it's really important to have those role models, and it's actually one of the reasons why I think I personally am so grateful to have this platform, with Outvertising, and also with Campaign Magazine, for example, being the first transgender columnist. And I was actually speaking to people about, should it be that the framing of that is first transgender columnist. And some people would advise not. You're more than that. That this, that, and the other. But I'm really strongly in favor of being very loud about that, because it's really needed. We need to have visibility for other people in our industry and beyond. And I'm very happy to be that visibility, because I know how important and powerful it was for me. Um, so yeah, and I'm not, I'm very proud of who I am and every part of myself. I'm not, pride is all about ridding yourself of shame. I'm not shameful about any part of my identity. Um, uh, Historically I have been, right? But I think that's what's really important to model, being really proud and loud about your who you are.
So there's been a movement, a sort of really structured movement to get more women on panels and to get women to take up space on panels and to not have shame about their presence on that panel and maybe they're not saying enough. Is there a similar movement that you know of to get more LGBTQI plus on panels and to get them bolstered with the same kind of confidence?
I'm always like personally trying to identify people that I feel have a unique voice, have an interesting perspective, and try and encouraging them to and funneling them into kind of an op-ed piece for a campaign or whatever it might be, or an opportunity on a panel. But yeah, it is interesting how so many people are very, people just are naturally nervous about that. I think everybody is. And some people actually don't want to do that either. It's not where they want to be. But I think it would be a good idea. That was one of the things I want to do generally, is find more ways for our queer and trans talent to be able to be elevated in the industry. And that's one way, right? We need that perspective. Absolutely.
For sure. And I think what all of your advocacy and voluntary and campaigning work shows is that there are so many ways to get involved and have a voice. So even if you don't necessarily want to be front of stage and sitting on a panel, there are things you can do to kind of help elevate the community and to get a bigger share of voice overall. Now, you're doing all of this while also being a business founder and a very successful business founder at that. So, what do you think of the mental wellness challenges of running a business in our industry? And with you having the background of doing all of this other really valuable, important stuff, and the challenges of being a business founder, are those compounded by being a transgender person?
Mm. I think what's interesting about this industry and like why I set up my business in the first place is historically I've found um, our industry to be quite a toxic place for our community to be in. And the reason, my planning brain around how I've kind of come to understand how that wasn't quite right for me and how it was sort of inhibiting my growth in many ways was um, this feeling that I needed to perform in a certain way in order to be successful, and my own kind of femininity, queerness, whatever you want to call it, was there was a lot of microaggressions to kind of try and check me from that, telling me, oh, maybe don't be so gay in this meeting, or all this kind of stuff. Um, and it kind of like prevented me from progressing to a certain degree. But also, I found that our industry, if you're on the agency side, there's sort of a weird toxic imbalance between agency and client in many ways, where you're kind of being a people pleaser, and our community is amazing at people pleasing. We're very good at it. We've learned it from a very young age. So you can actually start to, I started to view that as my strength. I'm really good at my job because I'm amazing at people pleasing. I didn't call it that, but I was able to kind of really empathize with anyone, be anybody to anybody, and convince them of what we needed to sell them, whatever it was. But it was really bad for my personal growth because I was leaning into a coping mechanism that actually was really harmful for me to continue to be this people pleaser. So liberating myself from our industry when I did, I started my own consultancy. Um, I felt then a little bit more detached from kind of playing that people pleaser role at an agency. I worked directly into marketing teams, which felt like I was more able to have a much more healthy relationship with some key clients. And I've been doing that for the last 5 years. And I think that that's the reason why I started my own consultancy. It was just a feeling of not growing, a feeling of not growing personally and professionally. Um, so yeah, that's the benefit of it, and that's why I really enjoy doing it. It is a challenge though, like running my own consultancy. I'm quite fortunate in many ways that I've had some really great clients. I'm kind of working into marketing teams, so there's a lot of infrastructure within that, and kind of teamwork, and that team infrastructure that you kind of are borrowing from in order to maintain your own sense of mental wellness, and for other people that kind of work with me. And I work with subcontractors and partner businesses, and we all are all kind of encountering the same challenges because we're all sort of small teams, and trying to work with each other. So we create our own structures really to support each other. So we might create. There's one thing that I join once a month, which is a load of contractors and consultants kind of join 3 meetings in that one day, and we check in with each other, and we're really vulnerable with each other, and we kind of help each other out. And there's these kind of structures that we all kind of create as these people that have kind of gone out on our own to do something that just feels much better for ourselves. So you kind of have to do a lot of that. And with my subcontractors, I think what I try and do as well is I try and meet them in person once a week. What I try to do, which I really am very firm on doing this, is I don't want to prioritize my business's success over somebody else's mental wellness or what they need. So I'm very honest and candid with people about that. I just want you to be happy and if this no longer works for you, then that's fine. I will help you into what will work for you. Obviously, there's negative sides to that from my business perspective, but ultimately, I just think that it all works out in the end. And I don't want to be that business like I found myself in before, which is prioritizing their needs as a business above my personal needs. Because I think if you just really just center people, everything will work out in the end, and everyone will be happy, and business will thrive. So yeah, that's how I've been tackling it.
Firstly, the theme of community helping to support your mental wellness is coming through really strongly in what you're saying. We
Mm,
reflect back to the top when you were talking about anxiety and lockdown and being linked to isolation and that lack of community. And then how you're working today, where even though essentially you're a solo business proprietor, you are making sure you have structures in place to connect with other people, and you are connecting with the people that are working for you as well. And
mm,
being really thoughtful about that. NABS is hugely passionate about the power of community and bolstering mental wellness, and it's amazing to hear that you've got all of that in practice. The other thing that's really impressive is the fact that you're saying to people, I'm not going to push your mental wellness just so that, my business can get massive at your expense. And I think that benefits you because ultimately people just feel really looked after by that. And if you feel
mm.
looked after, then you're more likely to want to do a good job, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I have this like vision in my head of like having this big kind of consultancy agency offering in like 5 years time or something. And the mental wellness is the huge part of it, inclusion and mental wellness. And you give everybody the opportunity for weekly therapy sessions and coaching and all this kind of stuff. And like it does happen in some places, but it's really not like it's not the main thing that is being prioritized. And I really believe that if the government actually invested in mental health properly in this country, and everybody as standard was offered free therapy weekly, how much more successful would our country be, like economically? How much more well and happy we would all be? I just think it's the key to so much.
Oh, completely. I mean, that's just so nabs. And when you're ready to take your business stratospheric and you want to build in all of the mental wellness work, come and chat to NABS and we'll help you out. We have therapy referral at NABS. So if you feel that you would benefit from that, then give us a call and we can help to get the wheels in motion on that. Now, it's not just about trans people and people from the LGBTQIA plus community fighting for themselves. It's about allyship as well, and allyship is key. And there's a lot of thoughts bandied about allyship, but what's the truth of it? How can cis and straight people in our industry be really useful allies?
Um, I'm really trying to remind myself that I'm not seeking allyship from others. I'm also being an ally to others or trying to, and that's also within our community. So how am I being an ally to intersex people? How am I being an ally to asexual people? Um, and I've been trying to develop my own education in terms of what does prejudice look like for someone that's asexual? What does prejudice look like for someone that's intersect, what are the barriers, what are the similarities. Um, it's a really interesting one because I think allyship's just so hard to it takes so much effort and energy to be learning about other experiences and working out how is it that I kind of am doing the right thing all the time for others. It's so much energy, um, and but I've got so much want to do it, but I'm constantly failing at it. I think that's what's really interesting to me about allyships.
But you're trying at it, and that's the important thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're trying, and that's the important thing. But I think that's the thing. Like, you're never going to be a perfect ally. You're just never going to. You just need to get comfortable with being somebody that is constantly trying. You're committing to. I think allyship really is about committing to like a curiosity and a learning mindset, and committing yourself to knowing that today your behavior is not as good as it could be tomorrow, and that's fine. And there's nothing bad about that. It's just how can you change your behavior in a tangible way that can make somebody else feel more included um, tomorrow. And it's quite easy to feel criticized when you realize that you haven't been being the best ally to certain communities, whether that's within our community, whether that's your cis or straight people, kind of, and their allyship towards trans people and LGBT people, or how the intersectionality of our community. Our advertising live conference wasn't very accessible, for example. We didn't have signing and on stage and things like that, um, and also, I'm very conscious that we can find it difficult to be the best allies to our black and brown colleagues as well. Like, how do we do that better? And I'm very conscious that we're not getting that completely right at the moment. And one of the reasons, like with advertising, for example, there wasn't a lot of trans and non-binary people in our community, and I really wanted to work hard to make that better. And then creating Trans Adland was actually part of creating a grassroots community that could then kind of start to interact more with advertising and find that there was community being brought into advertising. So that's one of the reasons why I set up Transatland. But that sort of needs to really happen for our black and brown colleagues as well, and for people that are, disabled and neurodiverse. And it's a, it's just so hard. It's so hard. But I would just say that it's about that curious mindset and removing your kind of barriers of I'm feeling attacked. You know, I'm feeling like I've been trying to show up and I'm getting is attacked. That you just need to remove that and just listen. And I learned more recently. What I'm trying to practice more recently is the act of like pausing. So pausing and sort of experiencing like with mindfulness your emotions, but not really reacting to them in the moment. So if you're feeling defensive, if you're feeling attacked, like experience that. Think, oh, why am I feeling attacked? Why am I feeling defensive? And just pause, take a beat, and then work out what do you want to do about that the next day, because it's unlikely that you're going to want to lash out in that moment, and you might kind of have better thoughts about how to improve your own allyship as a result.
I imagine
Um,
that would also be a useful strategy if you were trying to do some allyship on social media, say, and then somebody sent you a message that you felt attacked by or they were particularly unkind. If you take a moment and pause, you won't necessarily react out of upset or defensiveness, which might not do you any good in the long term.
yeah, I think so. I mean, social media in particular is sort of driven to get us to engage in that
Yeah.
moment, right? And um, it's trying to poke us the whole
Yeah.
time to react a lot of the time with negative stimulation. So you really have to moderate yourself with that. It's quite easy to get drawn into it. Um, I've had a few kind of like Twitter pylons as well, and that can be a really uncomfortable experience because you're just immersed in waves and waves of
Yeah.
negativity. And if you're anything like me as well, you kind of also want to see it all.
Yeah.
because you want to see the positives and like thank people, because not thanking people is rude, and so you end up going through everything, and it's really awful for your mental health. So yeah, I'm not the best person to listen to on how to manage social media, to be honest.
Probably just
Quite bad.
walk away from the screen, go and do
Yeah,
some
that's
allyship
what
in real life instead.
that's what I would tell people. I wouldn't do it myself because I just don't, but I'd tell myself to do it. Do I do it?
Nope.
No.
You're doing plenty of other things, so I think you don't have to feel upset about that. Now you spoke before about really being active in supporting the mental wellness of people that are working for you. What extra mental wellness support do you think people from the LGBTQIA plus community need at work, and how can managers best support?
I think it's a real challenge, isn't it? I don't know if I'm the best at kind of managing my own mental health. Never mind the people that work for me as well. To be honest, I'm try, but do I do the best? Can I do better? I can definitely do better. Um, and I think everybody's finding themselves in that situation. I think we're in this moment where we've had this pandemic that's kind of really exposed the lack of solid kind of mental wellness, and we've got businesses scrambling to kind of realize what does that actually then mean in practice to be able to look after people's mental health. um, and I suppose the most cynical views on it are, oh, there's a webinar and there's this and there's like an afternoon off here and this, that, and the other, and it's not it's not systemic. So like, how do you kind of tackle the systemic nature of our industry and how it is harmful to our mental health? And I think it goes back to that. I do feel like our industry is very toxic in terms of its toxic imbalance between agency relationship and client relationship.
So is that in terms of having to work all the hours, for example, because of client demands?
Yeah, constant client demands that have to be satisfied because the agency really needs it at the moment. Our industry is kind of suffering a lot with retention, so people are leaving, so then it puts more
Yeah,
strain on everybody else, and then that makes it even worse. And then also, just agencies are finding it more difficult to kind of secure work from clients as well, because more clients are taking work internally, and also to consultants and others. So I think it's really kind of a force of multiple factors. Um, uh, it's a really difficult thing to do, but because it's systemic change, right? So how
right.
do you really tackle that? Um, and it has to start from industry bodies kind of raising the awareness of the kind of the actual core issue. Things like the All In survey are really good because they really do kind of look at the do a health check of the industry in terms of that. And obviously, we see that our community in particular is really not thriving in industry. So
Yeah.
it's something like almost half people that identify as LGBT are affected by stress and anxiety and mental health conditions in our industry. And isn't it, I think it's over one quarter intend to leave their company within the next 12 months.
Yeah.
Um,
And actually, the proportion of people identifying as LGBTQIA plus in the survey was higher than the UK average, but at C-suites, that really drops off.
mm,
So that would speak to your point about retention being a particular issue with the community. It was really interesting to me that the all-in action was to improve the experience of LGBTQIA talent. Use gender pronouns in your organisation, which seems like a good start, but also seems from listening to you that there's an awful lot more that needs to be done. And that would just be like a very small entry point.
it is a very small entry point. Um, It is a very much a single-minded call to action ask that should be relatively easy to implement, but it by no means solves the countless issues that there are with mental health for our community. But it is an important one. So it's definitely it's an important one for trans and non-binary colleagues, and within my community that I created with my co-founder Jax for Trans Adland, we've got many people who experience that misgendering, um, and dead naming and all sorts of things within our industry. Um, and it's just, it is just relentless, feeling sort of, it feels very heavy to be misgendered, and you kind of leave your body when somebody does it, even, it doesn't matter how intentional or not it is. um it's very disorientating. It feels, um you just don't feel seen. You don't feel, yeah, you don't feel able to be yourself, I feel. um and so it is a really, really important one that's really easy for people to kind of work on and, solve. And what I've started to do as well, and I really noticed that nobody does this, is introducing yourself when in person with your pronouns. Nobody does this. Um, it's just a really important thing to start doing, to make people feel more seen, more included. But yes, yeah, it's a really small, easy thing for people to do. That's why we chose it as like a single thing to ask the industry a couple of years ago. But there's still a long way to go, just even getting that one ask done, right? So
Yeah.
how do we tackle this? I don't know. I really don't know. I'm a queer trans person volunteering my time, trying to do what I can, and feeling like the industry has let me down, myself, with my mental health. So I don't know how to fix the world on this, but I really am determined to try and continue to. I'm always very hopeful, and I'm always someone that, is always looking for solutions and then trying to find strategies to kind of, put in place. But for me, this feels huge, and it's, a systemic thing, that can't be tackled by any one organization, any one agency, any one body, any one survey, any one panel, any one, webinar. It's important that we keep talking about it. Um, but yeah, where's the real substantial action? Um,
It
mm,
feels to me that it's taken years, absolute years, to get women to the position where they are in the industry, and we're still not as advanced as we need to be.
mm,
So, if we take that as the experience of, let's say, we were the canaries in the coal mine when it comes to people from underrepresented groups being in the industry. So,
mm,
then if we translate our experience in terms of how long it's taken to the experience of other communities, then inevitably it's going to take quite a lot of time as well,
yeah,
because these things, there's so much resistance and there's so much systemic work, as you say, that needs to be done. But I think the important thing is that we've got people actually talking about it and fighting for it. So
yeah.
maybe there is some hope.
And I see it as like multiple pronged attacks, right? Multiple strategies. And one of the ways that I'm in my business trying to tackle that is by creating my own business, create my own structure, to kind of do the work I want to do. But then
Yeah.
there are, these huge, agency networks that are, they're not going anywhere, and they really can drive a lot of change. That then they can really invest and drive change there as well. So you can create new entities that, have all of this built in from the beginning, and are trying to do that from kind of the start. And then you can kind of try and change these big kind of organizations. You kind of need to do everything, because it's such a big problem and it needs multiple solutions.
But one thing can feed into the other. Phoebe Waller-Bridge couldn't find a decent role for herself, so she wrote Fleabag. But
Yeah,
she's now involved with James Bond, which is
yeah,
probably the most like machismo,
but
traditionally anti-feminist film body of films that you could find. And but somehow, by just being her authentic self and being like super feminist and talking about her, authentic sexuality and all of those kind of subjects, she's made it into the mainstream. So
mm, yeah, she's created something that went into mainstream, and then
yeah.
she's also in brought herself into the mainstream. Yeah, I do like that. I read about that, and I think that's really important, that she's able to do both those things, and that's it. That's exactly the dual kind of strategy of what we're talking about, isn't it?
Great. So my analogy worked. Excellent. I'm so
Yeah,
pleased.
I like that.
So
Yeah,
you were saying that the Adland community has in some ways let you down with your mental health, as it has done with so many people, which is why NABS is here to help boost people back up again. But are there any ways in which the Adland community has lifted you up or continues to lift you up?
Mm. Well, I do think the structures that our kind of queer community has created ourselves have lifted me up. So, Mark Ronicus, who was inhabiting my role before and obviously created Outvertising. I met Mark before they created Outvertising, being interviewed for a job actually, and we kept in touch that way. But he created this structure that is Outvertising that I felt lifted up by, and that hopefully, while leading it, it's helped to lift up others. So we've created our own structures like that, and like Adland, like I said, was very much a needed community structure to help lift up our community, where people try out new names, try out new pronouns. We support each other with the microaggressions that we experience. So we create our own structures as a queer community to lift each other up. But what's been really great as well is to be have that industry recognition and to be lifted up by industry. So Campaign magazine, for example, giving us that voice of that column, I felt very lifted up, and I feel like it lifts up our community within our industry. And anytime we get asked to be like brought in and kind of do talks and things like that, I feel we are lifted up, and it lifts up the people that are in those agencies, because they get to kind of meet more queer people, like hear that perspective, see that perspective kind of platformed at their agency. So there are multiple ways in which we are lifted up, and I feel lifted up. And what was the statement that we did as well this June? So we kind of put together what we call an industry intervention for Pride Month, where we asked brands essentially to stand their ground this Pride Month, because we were seeing the examples from Target in America and Bud Light, where brands were kind of abandoning their transgender influencers. In the
Bud
case of Dylan
Light was
Mulvaney,
terrible. That was awful.
yeah, and obviously we've since seen as well that with Dylan Mulvaney, they were not supported in any way by
Exactly.
Bud Light, which is awful. And there's no kind of self-regulation or legislation even in this country that would prevent that from happening to our influencers as well, queer or not. But that was another moment of feeling. I think we felt, from speaking for myself, I felt quite vulnerable us putting that out there in the world, because we were putting that out there asking for endorsement of it, and what if nobody endorsed it? But people did endorse that and then platformed that, and that was then covered a lot of in industry press as well. So we did feel lifted up by being vulnerable and asking people to lift us up, and they did. So I'm very hopeful that the industry is there wanting to make substantial change for our community, and we need to remove our cynicism a lot of the time to embrace that. And that's really what I want us to do.
NABS were happy to endorse the statement, and it's great to hear
Yes.
what a positive effect it's had, both on you
No, we're
personally and
very,
also for the community as well.
very thankful that you did that really early on as well. Thank you.
Yes. Um, well, we're friends with Advertising, and we really believe in what you're doing, and really happy to be an ally and a partner with you. It's been such a lovely chat. We've just got one final question.
Yeah.
What's a lesson you've learned about how to support yourself?
What's a lesson I've learned about how to support myself? Um, a lesson I've learned about how to support myself. I've realized that I absolutely need to go for runs. And this is a really strange thing for me to say, because as I was someone that always used to take pride in the fact that if I was going to miss the bus or miss the train, I would not run for it. I'm not someone that
Right.
will run. That's how little I would run. But the pandemic really, when we had that like 1 hour jail time,
Yeah.
where we could go out go out into the world, and we had to be exercising though, otherwise it was not sanctioned or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, that kind of encouraged me to start running, and that really helped me through my anxiety through the pandemic. And I now feel like if I'm not running, if I'm not finding time to be doing like a 5K run, then um, it's not good for me. And I haven't done it for about a month because of everything going on with advertising and Pride Month. So I've been really neglecting my mental health and my mental wellness this month, which I think is why it's so ironic that I'm doing this podcast with you today.
But maybe this
but
is going to give you the G up you need to put on your trainers when we finish this record and go for that run.
I think this is it. I was just saying to myself before, I was like, yeah, this is this is the kick I need to like reclaim all of this mental wellness that I had. So I will do that. And yeah, the trainers, I'll dust them off.
Please do. So you need to go for a run. I need to go for a swim. Seems like an opportune moment to sadly end our chat so that we can go exercise and support our mental wellness. And I love the fact that you're talking about exercise in terms of mental wellness and not like, oh, I need to go and get fit or whatever. Like, obviously, those are the benefits, but it's about doing something for your mental headspace, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I have my best ideas on the run. I wish I could actually just not think about anything, but I do. It just opens up everything. So yeah.
You've been really authentic and so generous in sharing the truth of your experience, and especially when you were talking about the experience of being misgendered and how that makes you feel. And that was such a valuable insight because I've never had that explained to me so honestly and so beautifully before. So thank you. And also the importance of the power of community coming through as well to support mental wellness, and the importance of curiosity in starting a journey to allyship as well. So thank you so much. If you want to find out about Outvertising, then just head to outvertising.org and have a look. You can see all of their fantastic work and get involved and follow them. Marty, it's been an absolute pleasure. Have a great day. Go for a run. I look forward to hearing all about the ideas that you have got on today's run.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much. Take care.